infrastructure up front? Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's almost kind of chicken and egg. The project, my understanding, has a pretty large construction costs and gap, and so there's a tool that was created by the legislature a few years after redevelopment fell through, called Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts. And so I think it's probably about September when the idea came about to say, could this tool be used to look at the public infrastructure part of the project, which is using this EIFD. And the way that this infrastructure financing district works is it captures future additional tax increment. So it's almost one of these things where without the project, there is no new value to the properties, which means that there's no new tax increment. Without a new tax increment, then there's nothing to pay for the cost for the project. The positive of that, I think, is that the whatever is left over of the tax increment, or whatever we decide to use for the project or use for other community benefits, it has a lot of flexibility. So that tax increment could be used for not only just public infrastructure, but it could be used for transportation issues, for workforce issues, for housing is one of the big key things that we're trying to do. So one of the proposals that Councilmember Chenier and I put on was to put out a carve out of any of the money that comes in, saying 20% of that money that comes in has to go towards affordable housing. So we can kind of make an assessment of how much that would be produced, but again, it's over time. So it's obviously the first couple of years, the property values and the new income tax increment would be limited, and as time goes on, there would be more to that. So
yeah, one thing, Eric, I just want to jump in here. I know there was a question, couple questions. One was, given that this is state property, how do you even get this tax increment? But the other issue is, if these are taxes that would accrue to the city of Sacramento and we're in a budget crisis, should that money not just go directly to the city? So the first question is, how do we get the money to begin with? Because it's the state project. And then the second question.
Yeah, so first, it's true that state projects, don't accrue any property taxes, which, as a Sacramento City Council member and a neighbor here near the project, it's always kind of been one of those, love-hate relationships. The state, whether it's a state building or the UC system or the state or Cal State University, they provide a lot of jobs, but they don't provide a lot of public tax dollars, right? So then everything that goes in to infrastructure or any of those additional costs, we actually can't get those for the city needs. But because the construction of this project could potentially be a long-term lease to a private entity, then the county has the ability to reassess the property through what's called a possessory interest tax. And that, in other words, saying that, yes, it is public land, which is not taxable, but because you're leasing it for such a long time, we can actually tax that at an interest rate, which is different than our property tax rate. But the county assessor would make that value. They would determine what the value is and then go from there. So again, it goes back to one of those chicken and egg things, right? The current property is a parking lot, which doesn't yield any resources. But if it is developed, then it does have the ability to be taxed and then be able to collect that tax. The second question is, should that money go to the general fund? Well, we could allow that. We could just say, don't do an EIFD, which secures the new property income tax. But if it goes into the general fund, the likelihood of the community ever seeing any of those benefits is very low. I mean, it would get locked into all of the other competing interests that the city has. And one of the things that has come out very vocally from a big majority of the neighbors and the residents is that we must do every effort that the project itself that gets created find a way to benefit the adjacent neighborhoods, adjacent community. And if in fact you know, there will be a regional benefit for having this, but if we don't make some tactical decisions to ensure that the regional benefits stay in the neighborhood, then and these resources go into the general fund, then there's no real way to make sure that the money stays and gets spent there. So that's one of the benefits of the EIFT, is that it locks the money in. Now, bear in mind here, I want to talk big picture here, because you know, I had looked at trying to figure out how do we do an EIFD for all of the 4 miles of Stockton Boulevard. And the reason that I have an interest in doing that and been pushing for that is to try to be able to keep our property tax benefits local, so that we can help build that whole vacant land, all of those areas throughout the area. So this 1/4 mile stretch of Stockton Boulevard, this little area, it's not even the entire campus, but the EIFT with this project has the ability for us to actually fund the environmental work to do the 4 mile stretch of Stockton Boulevard. And I think that's where the real gain is. And why is that a gain? The question was, where is the affordable housing going to go? Well, our hope is to use a lot of those vacant plots of land that are in Stockton Boulevard to be able to build up in there. Why haven't we been able to do that? Because the infrastructure costs, the costs of sewer, water, drainage. Some of it is environmental cleanup. Stockton Boulevard was old Highway 99, so it wasn't built for that kind of density. It was built for basically a highway, right? So strip malls, gas stations, and cleaners. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And again, we're trying out new things. Let me looking at the chat box here. How do we pay upfront regional benefits? Why doesn't the county kick in some? Oh, good point. So redevelopment, let's go back in a little history. Redevelopment used to allow us to take in the county money and the city money and the school district money. And when that went away, we lost the ability to pool that money. Unfortunately, the only thing we have to the city has to as a tool is the EIFD, which only allows us to collect the small little portion of city property tax. The new laws really restricted us to be able to tap into other jurisdictions' funds, the school district's property taxes, SMUDs, the mosquito abatement, and the county. So we wish the county would want to kick in. In Yolo County, the Yolo County decided to kick in their portion of the EIFD with West Sacramento. And in fact, West Sacramento's riverfront was built out because of using this tool, the EIFD. They basically use that money that they would generate to pump it back in. A project would develop, more property tax would generate, and now it's kind of developed this trickle effect. So the EIFD is a new tool, but one that we've actually seen work regionally here. So let me stop there, because I've tried to answer some of the questions in the chat box here, and then go from there. But
it looks like there's I think you talked about how will the city have to pay for infrastructure up front, and then who will be doing the contracts? Those are
good.
Yeah,
that's a good question. So I want to break the benefits, like how will this work, right? The construction of the project itself. One of the things that we've aggressively pushed on them to do is that with their contractor to work with their regional building trade so that they hire locally. One of the things we learned with the Golden One Center, with our water retrofit project, and now with the convention center, is that we've created a zip codes where we recruit apprentices, and there's an apprenticeship program for local workers to be able to not only train them but get them on the project. The benefit that happens is that we train local people, they work on a project, but now they have a skill that they can take with them that's portable everywhere else. So we've had a lot of positive experiences with those projects. They're currently working on that project labor agreement right now with the developer and our local building trades. The local plumbers and pipe fitters that are here in the district, a lot of them live in the district too. They're heavily engaged in making sure that they're using, again, local hire, local contractors to be able to do that. And then who pays, let me see, go back here. Who pays this tax? So the tax that is paid for is paid by the developer. So the developer pays that tax. That's, I think there was this, the B wrote it up as like some kind of tax credit of some sort, but they still have to pay all their taxes. And what we're trying to do is figure out how do we capture those taxes, or at least a portion of that, small little portion of that property tax. They still have to pay their county portion. They still have to pay any sales tax that happens on the property as well. But that small little increment of property tax, we're trying to keep that in the area for the long run. Is Wexford requiring the city to build out the infrastructure, streets, water, electrical? Normally the contractors these days, and I don't know if we have any, Alejandro, if we have any of our city staff on the call here, but normally these days, in fact, even Caltrans, the state and the county, the city doesn't itself have its own construction do big construction projects. We do local contracting with folks like Tykert that are local, folks like oh my God, I'm forgetting all the different contractors that are locally. Anyways, there are a lot of local businesses, and we're trying to keep the local businesses there. Most of them have project labor agreements with the local building trade. So usually you have a local union and a local contractor, and that's how this project will get built out, by those local folks.
But I just want to clarify, Eric, we're not talking about the infrastructure for this project on the campus. When you're talking about using this tax subsidy or using these taxes, you're talking about doing stuff on Stockton Boulevard. We're not talking about this money being used on the UC Davis campus, are we?
The money would be for the public hookups that go to the campus, that public infrastructure. The building itself, they have to pay for that building itself.
Why shouldn't they pay for the public infrastructure? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, the fact is that there's a gap in the project, and so that's where they've always been, and this is the first time where we've actually been able to use some leverage with UC by saying, okay, we've got this tool where we can leverage this portion of property taxes, but here are the exchanges that we want to see. Because I think Richard's probably seen the frustration with us here. Maybe I'd love to get your thoughts. UC is a private entity. They're constitutionally protected. They usually do what they want, and there's been very little leverage that we can get them to do the things that we want. One of the things that we want to accomplish with this EIFD is require them to commit to a community benefits agreement where, one, not only are they going to do the local hiring and construction, but we want the overall, not the developer itself, but we want the UC Davis campus to also commit to, one, looking at their hiring patterns that they currently use with the current campus to start doing the zip code hiring within the adjacent neighborhood, so that we actually start hiring, being more intentional about hiring people in the area. And two, we want to require them to start looking at the future jobs to be hired locally. So that way that our employment strategy is a three-pronged approach. Not only the construction of the project, but the current jobs and then the future jobs, and getting them to commit to that piece in exchange for support with the public infrastructure costs.
And what's the price tag?
Man, I can't remember the overall price tag for the project, but it was in the 100 millions, the 100+ million for the overall construction of the price tag.
No, I'm talking about the cities. This portion that you're wanting the city to.
So this portion here that we're looking at is somewhere around 30 million. Then there would be another 36 million, I believe, that would be eligible under that 20% carve out also for affordable housing. So it's almost one of these things. Without the project and without the EIFD, there isn't any new tax revenue, which means that there's no new tax revenue for the affordable
busting
housing
in
project.
because I kept trying to ask this question and it hasn't gotten answered, and I asked it 3 times on the chat.
Oh, Francesca, I didn't
Is
see
the going
that.
to have to pay for the whole thing up front? My question is, this tax trickles in year after year as it's assessed and paid. But are we going to have to pay for everything up front and pay ourselves back from this tax?
No, and that's, I think, the things that we're trying to figure out. I mean, we're trying to figure out how is the tool, how can we best use this tool? Because the first years are very limited amounts, right? So, and the first years probably, my understanding, are only going to generate in the couple hundreds of thousands the first years. And then as the building, as they build out more of the buildings, then those get assessed. And with each new building, there becomes a new assessment. So then there's more tax revenue. And so and this is only for phase one of the project. So again, there's still a lot of work to do. And that's why the action that the city council took 2 weeks ago was a resolution of intent. It only starts the process for us to say, okay, we have an intent to look at this. The state law requires that we have a series of hearings. And then through that process, we're going to be able to identify in a clearer picture what we can do. And so I think that's the important part here. Alejandro here put out some numbers here. And that, so there's some estimates, and I don't know if this is correct, but that there could be a total of $37 million generated. Yeah, that's for the affordable housing piece. And infrastructure costs that are needed now are $30 million. But the IFD over its lifetime could generate about $180 million. Again, all of that depends on the growth of the project. So it's almost it's incremental. I think the ability of this, I think the real bigger picture of this is that if we can actually get the full phases of the EIFD, say phase one of the EIFD is the Aggie Square campus, which is 1/4 mile. And if we can actually also do an EIFD for the entire Stockton Boulevard, which is 4 miles, of the area, now we can actually start really, and that won't be tied at all to Aggie Square. That's I think the unique catalyst here is that the 4 mile stretch won't have anything to do with Aggie Square, which could be used exclusively for neighborhood needs, such like a bus rapid transit system that allows us to be used for that area. But it's almost like without this catalyst, we can't even get started on
your
the
mask
bigger
is
4
right
mile
there.
stretch.
Well, this one's a little smelly.
Yeah, one question on here, Eric, is who decides how the incremental tax money is spent? I believe that's the city council. You can answer that. But again, just to be clear, when this kind of funding was used with redevelopment agencies, I think a bond was issued. But essentially, really what I'm hearing is that this money is going to help Aggie Square pay for their infrastructure to hook up to the city. So really, in exchange, I guess, they're supposed to do these things around job creation and that kind of thing. So I don't know.
Yes.
To me, it seems like, so it's sort of a bribe to them or something. I mean, why?
Well,
I don't know.
It's a trade-off. Look here, and here's the reality. One, without the project, we don't see any of these benefits. And two, there haven't been any very strong levers for us to get to a point. We won't go through with the IFD until we get any kind of solidified term sheet. So one of the things that we did for the convention center and the Golden One Center is we were able to get a term sheet that is something that legally the city can go and use against the project or UC Davis or Wexford to deliver on those agreements. And that's what we really want to work with the community on, is what are the things that we want, right? What are the things that we truly want? And that's the conversations we're having now, is do we want them to commit to a pipeline plan with their local schools? Obviously one of the key things that we have a lot of employees who are local 3299 AFSCME employees or state employees. They want to make sure that the employees are not contract employees and that they actually are hired through medical benefits, retirement, and the benefits of being with the public institution. Those are the kind of term sheets that we want to start working on now. The other piece is on the transportation piece, on the traffic mitigation. Those are the things that I think we really want to drill down and get them to commit before they even see any revenue from the EIFD. That I think is the real work we got to focus on, is figuring out what are the I hate to use the word extract, but what are the clear, definable, tangible things that the neighborhood needs before this project can move forward.
Well, and we're buying with $30 million, I guess.
Yeah.
But two
I mean,
questions.
if your words are,
Is it a bond being issued and then somebody else, I don't know if you answered the question, who decides how the money is spent?
so to use the money, there has to be a public financing authority created. So just for that money that's created. And the public financing authority is composed of 5 members, 3 council members and 2 community members. And I think, Manuel, I think I saw you submitted an application for that. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So for the last, I think 2 weeks, we put out a request for applicants. And so the PFA would be constructed for that. And so it's separate from the city, but there are 3 council members. So obviously, there is council influence on that. But the state law dictates how that money can be spent and what the restrictions are. So much of it is dictated by state law.
Just because we allocated a certain amount of time for this, do other people have questions that have not been answered? I don't know whether if you want to raise your hand or Stephanie's got one.
I posted on the chat here. What are the plans for freeway access off both 50 and 99? Because T Street, for example, has become a freeway on-off ramp for 50.
Yeah, that's a good question because that's been a problem even before this. And those are one of the things that our city department has put in the EIR to start having Wexford address that issue. I mean,
yeah, it's final.
The EIR, yes, the EIR is final, but that doesn't mean that we can't push them to start addressing transportation issues. I mean, that's I think the real key thing. One of the transportation mitigation plan is one thing that a lot of neighbors have been asking for is what are you going to do with the increase of employees? Are you going to require or allow some level of telecommuting? Are you going to be pushing for them to do incentives such as free bus transit passes? Are you going to be allowing incentives for carpooling? So those are the kind of things that we want that they agree to, so that when there's a future business that comes in, they're already part of the requirement for any business that comes in. It isn't something you have to negotiate on in the future. So I think the important thing for us that we're trying to get to is any effort to try to reduce that. I know some of the issues here, Deborah, that you've been working on actively is on the parking situation, making sure that they have adequate parking on the campus. And they're still pushing on that.
Go ahead, Deborah.
I had a question on the public art, if there's any. I tried posting it. Can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious, as part of the project, we're really hoping that they contribute funding for public art in Elmhurst and surrounding neighborhoods. Where are we on that? And if they're not doing some of the public art that we'd really like to see, can this tax be used for a portion of that?
Yes, those funds can be used for public art. It's public art is a more, at least in our city view, we consider as part of our public infrastructure. And this is some of the things that, like, again, I want to hear what you guys are interested in, what the neighborhoods are interested in. We did talk a little bit about this, about how do we push them to do more public art. Somebody brought up the water tower as a,
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, that's a huge canvas for a lot of local artists. Plus also the utility boxes. I think that's important. And I think that should be part of the term sheet. It's like, what's the level of commitment for public art? And any ideas or concepts? I think that helps me go back and negotiate and push back on UC Davis.
I think because we've got other things on the agenda, I think there's one question here I didn't see was answered, and then I think we should move on. But isn't Wexford requiring the city to build the infrastructure for Aggie Square before any buildings are erected?
I'll get back to you on the timing of that. I don't have an answer for that question, but I will make sure I have an answer for you on that. I saw another question.
One other thing, Eric.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
they were going to be requiring employees to be part of the UCD infrastructure, part of the unions and stuff. At every Aggie Square meeting I've been to, they said the majority of the employees that Aggie Square will generate will be employees of private companies, not UCD employees, not union employees.
There's a mixture of that. And so my understanding today when I talked to them is what I've heard from the labor unions specifically is they want a solid commitment for the service workers. Now, some of those are I don't know what classifications those are, but we're going to be working with our local labor unions who represent them to try to piece that out. Like who will be represented by what, which jobs are committed to that, but the push is to get them service workers. So some of the private companies that come in, they'll have specialty folks, and I understand that some of those will be those, but there's a lot of the general employee work that has to that's going to be used to maintain those buildings that everybody uses. So a general benefit, those should all be public employees.
So, but how are you going to force these private companies to allow the unions in for their secretaries and their janitors, and other people within that private building?
Labor peace agreements are something that we already have in the city. So making sure that Wexford, as part of their negotiation with the city, in contract with the city, also commit to saying that any person that contracts with Wexford has labor peace as part of their contract with Wexford. So holding Wexford accountable helps us get any future. That way we're not going piecemeal after every new company.
And is Wexford going along with that?
Yeah, they have not objected to a labor peace agreement. So that way now will they unionize everybody? Well, that's up to organizers, right? I mean, but making sure that they have a labor peace agreement, I think, is number one, and that the service workers are all UC employees. And Assemblymember McCarty has been pretty active and vocal about that, also with the chancellor. And my understanding, per my conversation with Assemblymember McCarty and that the chancellor has been supportive of making sure that happens.
I think the service workers at UCD are like clerical people, janitors, housekeeping, gardeners, that kind of ilk. So those will all be required to be UCD employees represented by a union?
That's my understanding. That's kind of where the movement is going as part of the CBA. So we've got three kind of major areas where there's the workforce piece that we're working on, or the housing piece that we're working on, and then the educational piece we're working on as well. There's three major areas. But if there are other things like art, infrastructure, all those pieces, transportation, those are the things that I want to make sure that my office is aggressively pushing on the campus here.
So what other mechanisms, because I think we're going to need to wrap this up, to get you the feedback about, I mean, I think some questions have been raised here, concerns and focuses for these funds. I mean, personally, I still think it's $30 million that, I don't know, do we really need to pay their infrastructure costs? I realize you're using it as a negotiating process, but what's the process for people to just contact your office to give you more feedback? I guess, I know you did have a town hall.
So we will have town halls. Jay and I are going to do joint town halls, one in November, one in December. The state law requires us to have public hearings, and so in January there'll be a public hearing, in December there'll be a public hearing in January, and then if we decide to create the financing district, the public financing authority and the district itself, if we decide to do that, then by state law we're required to have an additional 3 public hearings before we can even expend or plan to expend any dollars 30 days apart. So there's like a very scheduled level of public hearings. Now, I encourage you to call me, contact my office, email me directly if you want. If you email Alejandro here in my office, Alejandro, if you could put on your email address and my email address there as well. Please let us know. I also, put together a little stakeholder group with Richard, Deborah, and Manuel last time, just to kind of drill into it. If you guys want to have like an Elmhurst Aggie Square subcommittee, I'm glad to do, a meeting on it, and we can drill down on specific issues. Most of the time, it's easier just to drill down on a specific issue, because if you try to capture housing, transportation, workforce, and then the tax revenue piece all in one meeting, it's just a lot. So, and I don't mind making myself available for every one of those little pieces. Art, we can have art as one particular one.
Yeah. So it sounds like we need to follow up with you about that. I think just in the interest, all of tonight could have been on Aggie Square, but it's not. So if people have questions, we'll follow up with you, Eric, on getting you feedback. And if you still put your questions in the chat, we will be keeping track of the chat. So is that okay? Did anybody else have anything burning, or can we move on to the next item? Okay.
Great. I just want to thank everybody. And again, if there are...
Eric, stay on for a minute, because this next item is the issue about the helicopter noise.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Good.
So
leading to that,
go ahead.
my job is to push and be aggressive on the campus as your councilman. So speaking of that, helicopter noise.
Yeah, who wants to address this?
Well, I will. My understanding is the helicopter, the company that contract with UCD, they were given a mandate to a flight path that goes up Stockton Boulevard, a commercial area, to the UCD Med Center campus, and they leave south along Stockton Boulevard and then go up above residential areas. They are going east and north. I mean, they fly right over my house, and I'm directly east of the campus. And so they're violating that all the time. And so, a lot of neighbors are upset that these helicopters are not keeping to the agreed flight path.
What I will do also is bring this issue up next. We have a standing meeting that the mayor, Jason here, and I are going to have with the campus. We'll bring this up as one of those issues of, hey, look, quality of life issues. We need to make sure we address the current issues before we even start having to deal with the future issues. So glad to talk about the enforcement of that and get a report back on
one
that.
Company, Reach, is the helicopter service. I think that's the only one that supplies the life flight helicopters to Med Center now.
Okay.
They're actually one of several, Richard.
Oh, are there? Okay.
Yes, Reach is one of the most notorious for neighborhood overflights, and for whatever reason, their helicopters are the loudest and most slow flying. PHI is another one.
Is it? Okay.
They're yellow and blue as opposed to Reach's red. They're also pretty much on the high violation list. There are others that land at the Med Center that are a variety of entities, some local, some CAL FIRE, some CHP, sporadic landings. But the most notorious ones, I think the Med Center is familiar with Reach and PHI. Right. So this is a 20-year plus problem. So anything that could be done to elevate this.
Well, the timing is right. They're looking for our support, so
Yeah, it's and there are certain weather conditions that would allow them to deviate from the agreed upon flight path, but oftentimes, and those are high winds, rain, fog. I mean, really some extreme weather conditions. But I think most of the neighbors would tell you a lot of the neighborhood overflights are on clear sunny days.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, none of those exceptions would come in. So we're not, community relations can do some triage of the complaints, but they don't seem to be able to get us any real solutions.
Okay.
That's
Well,
what we're looking for.
let's elevate that.
Can I just chime in here?
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, it's also a question of altitude.
Yeah.
The red one reach is extremely low.
Yep.
It will come in just a couple, it seems like maybe 200-300 feet high, really loud, scares the crap out of me in the middle of the night. It's like Vietnam.
Yep.
It's really, really scary. And we have the flyover from Exec Airport. So that's a consideration why they can't come in real high, I'm sure. But there's got to be a compromise in there.
Well, let's put it on them to tell us that they can't do that.
We would, yeah, love that. Oh, Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
All right. So like Deborah said, I've been doing this as well since we moved the flight pad from, which was just UCD back in the early 90s. So this whole thing is it's ridiculous. All you got to do is look at the flag, the windsock, and they're flying over from the north, they're flying from the east, the west, the south, whatever they feel like doing. If they're bringing a transplant organ, if they're bringing paperwork, a lot of the things aren't important. Okay, so that whole thing is a giant, big mess that they've gotten away with for a long time, and they know it. And we've worked with community relations. All right, so and they're doing the best they can, but you know, like, it just needs to be elevated big time.
Well, I think this is you know, and Richard, maybe I'll ask for you and I to play good cop, bad cop also. Next time we're with the chancellor on that. But we will elevate this to and make sure that it gets to you know, it's like, hey, again, if you're trying to be a good neighbor, but you're not being a good neighbor now. So
right. And one more thing, we have the original flight path. So Rick, it's actually, there's different ways that they're supposed to come in that I'm not sure we're all on the same page. I can send you the original map and the original agreements, you know, with extreme weather conditions, and it's 1,000 feet elevation. It's not 200 or 300 or 400. Okay.
Really?
It's hilarious. If you can see the pilot's beard,
Yeah,
a little close.
and I think what Carrie, go ahead.
With all respects, we don't want to slow down a heart transplant or something that's really critical, but I think it's interesting that you say a lot of paperwork is coming in. Let's stop that.
Well, I think the other thing is they need to follow the flight paths. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if
the flight paths.
Right. It's not, it matters not if there's a pediatric person in CPR or a 90-year-old CPR patient. That's not appropriate to change things in the air with an agreement. Ambulances on the ground are not allowed to do that either. So it is the DOT, Department of Transportation, is ultimately responsible for this, and it's their job to manage it or police it, and everybody's just kicking the can, and it's, so everybody matters, of course, but you don't you know, jeopardize other people's quality of life either.
So we need to have some follow-up on this, and there are other people who aren't on this call, Eric, who have been complaining also. So I think we need, and I don't know, Deborah, or, you know, Stephanie, Carrie, or Rick, if you have a recommendation of what we need to do going forward, or do we want to meet with Eric, or what should we do? What's our next step here?
Well, anybody can go out and video if you hear them coming. I was almost going to video one of the red ones today because he came in so low.
Yeah.
So that might be one thing, a little bit of
So,
physical
let-
evidence.
Let me throw, Stephanie, let me throw this out there. One, I think Alejandro, if we could reach out to also Congresswoman Doris Matsui's office, because I think, both, if this is a flight path issue, we usually work with their office on this. But two, let's get a meeting with at least somebody higher up on the UC campus, so that we can actually get to and be focused on this, so it doesn't get distracted with all the other issues on Aggie Square, because you're gonna have people talking about housing and all this thing, and then there's the flight path. So let's just make one solid meeting to get at this piece.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because, community relations, I think, does a good job. But I kind of got the feeling from them that nobody listens to them, even at UCD Med Center. So, yeah, we need somebody higher up.
Yeah.
And last time I talked to Laura Nisnek, she actually recommended that the ENA and or your office would be great in a joint letter, write Brad Simmons.
Yeah.
And get him to maybe focus it. What I've been told by community relations that the emergency department pre-hospital care coordination unit has some kind of involvement with calling the helicopter companies when there is a neighborhood complaint passed on through community relations.
Yep.
But it's very unclear to me what that process is or what the communication is. So anyway, that's a thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going to the chief, I think he's interim chief medical officer, is it?
Correct.
Yeah. So going to the chief medical officer, I think, and getting it on their, radar, we'll definitely, we'll make sure that happens, right? Because I mean, there's probably layers to get to him. So, but we can start working on that. So Alejandro,
But it doesn't seem over the years that there's any repercussions for the helicopter companies when they violate these flight patterns.
yeah.
They just
Well,
say, okay,
I think that's why we want to get Congresswoman Matsui's office, because the real enforcement authority on the code on some of that is through the FAA. So we'll check. Alejandro, can you also follow up with Peter Limas from our city code department to see what kind of code enforcement authority we have over that?
Yeah, I'll make sure to follow up. And then if you guys can indicate which board member I should be working with, I can help coordinate with that as well.
Okay, so we'll follow up on that. What he wants to know from which board? Okay. I don't know the answer to that. Which board member? Oh, you mean with us? Deborah or Rick or yeah.
Yeah,
I want to be involved in that too.
Totally.
We have a committee, so if you just connect with Rick and Deborah, they will connect with you.
and Carrie.
Yeah.
And there's other people, yeah.
Stephanie too. Yeah, and years ago, I would say Reach. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say Reach years ago had a person who was pretty responsive about commenting on neighborhood overflights and actually speaking to pilots. That doesn't seem to be the case. And the name we were given by community relations, Maggie, you tried reaching out to that person and he didn't respond. Is that correct?
Yeah, and he's not listed as an employee. I mean, I tried to leave him a phone message and
And he could have changed.
Call my neighbor.
That's kind of a problem with the med center not giving us real tangible information, because even the referral they gave us to call Caltrans Aeronautic Division was kind of lame, because I mean, years ago, ENA spoke with them and they don't do enforcement. They help approve the flight plans.
Right.
For other access issues, but they're not the enforcers. So if a company doesn't comply, that's not their job. That would be the med center's job, because it's their roof that these people are coming in on. So But yeah, getting some good context would be helpful.
Well, we'll start there definitely.
Okay.
We'll at least start getting you the good context, but we'll get moving on a
I'm going to
meeting
sign
with the
off. Thank
appropriate
you
person.
all. That's very nice of you
Thanks,
guys.
Stephanie.
Thank you,
Bye.
Stephanie.
Everybody.
And we do have a committee, so I think Alejandro, you can follow up, email Rick and Deborah, and they will hook up with the rest of that committee.
Makes sense.
I'm just going to move us on to the next last item, Eric, which is the leaf blower ordinance, which is on the agenda, I believe, tomorrow. And we've done some emailing back and forth with the ENA board. I think there is support for that.
That's to expand the use of leaf blowers, correct?
No, it's wrong. Right. Expand the disposal of them. No, just kidding. But there are other neighbors on here, so I don't know if other people want to. This ordinance would restrict the use of leaf blowers when the air quality gets above 100, which is getting into the 50 to 100 is moderate. Below 50 is very good. When you start getting above 100, you start having a negative impact on sensitive groups and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there's other neighbors that are here that want to weigh in on that, on the leaf blowers. Anybody?
Oh, I just want to say the proposed ordinance, it seems punitive and reactive. It's not proactive and constructive.
In what? Okay. Explain.
Well, in the
How
way,
so?
why wouldn't we pass an ordinance that limits the emissions from those gas leaf blowers and the noise level of both gas and electric leaf blowers? Those have more impact. I mean, my neighbors, gardeners today, were using gas leaf blowers. I almost died of asphyxiation from the fumes.
Yeah. No,
So
look,
why to pollute? That must pollute more than the dust they generate.
well, the leaf blowers. So here's the two problems with leaf blowers. Number one, yes, they kick up dust, and particularly when we've had all these fires and we have days where their particulate matter AQI levels are above 100. I mean, that in itself, like when we've got that bad air, do we really want to be kicking up more particulates from the actual leaf blower itself? And that goes with even an electric leaf blower.
Right.
Second, most of them are gas leaf blowers, and the two-cycle stroke engine puts out more emissions, more particulates than actually your car does, because you're burning oil
Right.
at the same time with your gas. So there's clearly a problem there. And so using a gas leaf blower with a two-cycle stroke cycle engine during bad particulate days, it just isn't good. It isn't good public health. The ordinance, what it does is it doesn't just affect companies, it's also individuals. So, if your neighbor is out there, when this ordinance gets passed, if your neighbor's out using the leaf blower, you can call code enforcement, and they, as much as a company, will be cited for that. I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be that a lot of the companies, a lot of the people don't all live in Sacramento. They might live in the unincorporated area. They might have businesses that come into the city to do work. So we're going to be working with the air district. I happen to be the chair of the air quality management district right now.
Good.
And so it's timely that Councilman Harris and I are working together to try to find a ordinance that we can start this process to be able to go county-wide and educate people about the issue with leaf blowers during poor air quality days. Now, the fact is technology is changing. The market is what it is. These are businesses, and hopefully we get to a point where we're moving people to electric leaf blowers. But still, even an electric leaf blower on a poor air quality day should not be kicking up more dust. I mean, there's still that piece there. So that we're trying to strike a fine line in the first attempt at this. We would be the first in our region to actually do something this progressive to address it. And I also want to be sensitive and make sure that we do as much education out there, because the predominant industry a lot of them are immigrant Spanish-speaking workers, not all of them, right? And this is their sole form of income. So I think we're not saying, just completely ban or stop the industry. We want the industry to evolve. We want the industry to change. But we also know that it's a sensitive group that, particularly during COVID, has had bigger challenges. So we're trying to make a reasonable step. We've done it. Somebody brought up wood burning stoves. I mean, I think if I wish I would have brought a map of like the what our particulates were from the day we started our check before you burn, because AQI in Sacramento was here, and now we're 2 decimal points away from where we were before. So anyways, we're making progressive efforts. I'm hoping we have the council support for this, but we need people to call in too and say this is a good idea.
Yeah, I already made a comment because I'm in favor of it, but like Rick said, it's a good start, but we're going to need more. So hopefully we can at least get this done. Because like you say, if you're going to change a culture, if you're going to get a group to evolve, you just don't want to slap this whole big thing on them at first. So
Yep.
This would be hopefully with the understanding this is just a start. This is just chipping away at it.
It is. I think so. And I think hopefully, our neighboring cities will slowly start to evolve there. And then our county, given our change in the board of supervisors, hopefully will also begin to evolve. And Greg Fishman, who comes from the SMUD board, is a big advocate for zero emission technology. One of the last strategies that when we passed the city's climate action policy, one of the strategies that I asked to be part of the motion was to start looking at the jobs and the manufacturing component of this whole area. We should be getting into the business also of how do we produce those technologies here. We build electric trains here. We're one of the largest areas of carbon fiber manufacturing that you need for any kind of electric vehicles or whatnot here. So we should be looking at how do we get at other parts of the zero emission market that we can manufacture here and hire people to do that kind of retrofit work. So I think all of these pieces, we got to build them in together.
Okay, anything else on that? We can move on to the rest of the agenda. I just want to put a plug here for neighbors who are on this call. You can be part of the ENA board and we'd love to have you. And appreciate your being on this, Eric. And so people should also send their comments into Eric about this issue as well. Obviously you and Jeff Harris are working on it together, but so any other questions for Eric before we move on with the rest of the agenda?
Well, before I sign off, we are working on the Coloma Center, our annual tree lighting event, and we're hoping to do a drive-through COVID, thoughtful way to have something spirited. So we hope you guys will participate in that, and we really want to figure out how to make it cheery and keep some kind of tradition alive, but also be very sensitive of not spreading more COVID. So
yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Alejandro.
So, yes. So, looking at our agenda now, we record of financial decisions made between meetings. We approved a Facebook posting policy, so the board has that. Financial report, I think we have $330 some odd in our bank. So immediate business, I'm hoping that the neighbors who are on this call have had a chance to look at the agenda. If there are concerns that you have that aren't on the agenda, this would be a place to raise those. So, and if, I can't read this, what? Okay. Okay, and you can, do that as you come along because we go along too. So one of the items on the agenda is the sound wall. We did get a report back, and trees that are slated for removal apparently have big red X's on them. I understand some of those are fairly substantial trees. I haven't been out yet to look at them, but that was a concern that was raised because, of course, trees, modulate sound as well. So if you live along the freeway there, even if you don't, apparently the trees have been marked. Some of them are supposed to be pruned, but I intend to get out there and see which ones they're they're slating for removal. We've had an issue with an abandoned property at 4525U. I don't think Dale's on this call, but he has been following up with Councilmember Guerra's office on this property, which seems to have some work and then stop and some work and stop. And the neighborhood has been concerned about that because they don't really want a vacant property there. And there were some property break-ins, I think, in that area between T and U. I know, Carrie, you had emailed about those. So we do, like I said, we have a neighbor who is kind of monitoring that. It's 4525 U Street. And
Is that the burned house?
yeah.
Right. So, yeah. So can't we just get in touch with the owner or the?
Well, actually, it's too. I think that I'll have to get off the call because I think that Dale, who's been following up on this, has been in touch with him about it. And so I don't know what the latest status was. We walk by there all the time, and it did seem like after there was some conversations that activity picked up, but Dale says it stopped again. So he is in touch with Guerra's office, and I'm not sure what the next steps are on that. But probably if other people express concern, that probably helps elevate it too. So if you, you or some of your neighbors and people that are in that area, more familiar with that situation, if they can contact Guerra and say, look, or contact the ENA. I mean, we have asked that they follow up on this. So,
Okay.
but again, just trying to raise the profile.
Yeah.
So the council member mentioned this drive-through winter holiday event at Coloma, and this is on the board's agenda. I think what they're looking for is participation. They were looking for, I believe, at December 5th. And I don't know, I told them, I said, well, the board would talk about it, but I don't know, if people want to, actually volunteer to participate in that. They said, well, we could have a table. I guess they're planning on handing out goodie bags. So I don't know what other board members or neighborhood folks. I mean, I think really it's a question of, do people want to help with it? So.
Well, it's more of a matter of what does Eric need from us? What kind of volunteers? What kind of duties do they want us to do as volunteers?
Well, one of the things he said was they wanted us, we could have a table, I guess, if we wanted to hand out stuff. I guess people are going to drive through there. So they wanted somebody to play Santa Claus. They want people to help hand out stuff. I guess they are going to put together the goodie bags, whatever it is that's going to be handed out, unless we wanted to hand out something. So they want volunteers, I think, that night. I guess it's going to be at night. So physical people to be there. And as he said, I think they're trying to do it in a way where, I don't know, people are going to have masks on, people are driving through their cars, they're just sort of developing this, and they've approached us to say, will you guys help?
We don't have a ton of money for stuff.
No, we're not. No. I don't think they're not looking for money. They're looking for bodies, people that say, yes, I will show up that night. I will help you do, hand out.
But I don't know what they mean about us having a table. A table to do what?
I guess hand out stuff if we wanted to do that.
Hand out what stuff? That's what I mean. We don't have a lot of money to buy a lot of stuff to hand out.
I think they're going to give it to us. So they're going to give us goodie bags to hand
They're
out.
doing the goodie bags. This would be if we wanted to hand out information, I guess, about the ENA. Anyway, sorry, Manuel, were you saying something? Go ahead.
No, sorry, I said exactly what you said, Maggie, that they're going to give us the goodie bags to hand out if we do it.
Carrie?
If they have something to hand out, because it's not like I would assume, we don't have bumper stickers or T-shirts to hand out or sell, right? So
No.
We have an informational flyer. Maybe we can stick that in the goodie bag.
right, and but do you guys have a banner? Ever any banners that's plastic one or paper one that's got Elmhurst neighborhood? Because it would be cool to have a table that at least has our name there, and so that our people know that we have an active organization. You know what I mean? I think it's a worthy thing to do, which means I said something. So that means I might be one of those people that would stand there and hands.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to stand there and do whatever they need me to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can be free that evening too.
Okay.
Are you getting this down, Francesca?
She is.
As long as I'm socially distancing from people,
I
wearing a mask.
the idea of just having the banner, I mean, or having our name out there, that does make sense. And maybe,
It is good.
you know, we can hand
Well,
out.
it's our neighborhood.
If we don't have a banner, maybe we could use some of the $300 to have a banner made.
Well, or we could make something for less than that. We've
Yeah,
got a lot.
I might have
Right?
I might have a rollout thing. It might say pancake breakfast on it though, but I'll find. I think I have something.
All right, why don't you see what you have?
I will.
Maggie Carrie was our past president for people that are new here. She was the president. She hasn't been for years, but Carrie was the president of ENA for many, many years. She definitely paid her dues.
Yeah, way back.
Well, if you could find something, that would be great.
Yeah, I think I might have something and or can figure out something. So
Okay.
We also have the header. Somebody must have done some artwork for Elmhurst before I arrived on the scene, because we could price out what a vinyl banner.
Or
would
you could
look
simply
like.
print that too. I mean, you could
Right.
Oh, we want something to last. So if we're gonna
What
do
about
it.
the sandwich boards?
Well, we
I
have
don't know.
those too. We could put something on
They're
those.
in the breezeway at Coloma. I don't know what they look like, what shape they're in, but we do have sandwich boards that can just be stood up too.
Those-
They're sturdy. The sandwich boards are sturdy, but you've got to make a poster or something to go on them.
Okay,
Okay,
so
I'll
maybe
look into it.
Yeah,
I'll look into that.
Okay, Carrie and Manuel are willing to participate in this, and so I'll touch base with you guys after this and see what, following up with the city.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maggie, can I ask you a quick question? Because I need to head out and pick up my brother from the airport. Can you let me in from my phone in the meeting?
can't you let yourself in?
So I met you, the host. So just in case. But I still want to listen in. If you can let me in from the phone, and then I'll still be on the computer.
When
so I
you
can
find,
record the meeting.
yes, we can do that. I didn't know we were the host. Okay, sure.
Well, he's made me
Thank you.
the same
Sorry about
being
that.
the host.
We're on the same computer.
All right.
Oh yeah, you better make me Patricia. Yeah, okay.
Yes, you're the host.
Make the person who knows something about it the host. Okay.
So I'm gonna still be on for my computer to record the meeting, but let me in from the phone so that I can listen in and. still
Okay.
You
participate.
you can stop recording now. I think we
Please.
just wanted to record the part
Okay.
with Guerra.
Guerra.